are now tuned in to the 2-Minute Warning, a live stream community conversation pertaining to social and political issues and how we can collectively resolve them. Powered by the Westside Gazette.
Good evening, and welcome to the 2-Minute Warning, powered by the Westside Gazette, Broward County's oldest, blackest, boldest family-owned newspaper. And here with me tonight is the editor-in-chief of the Westside Gazette and the chairman of the National Negro Publishers Association, Mr. Bobby Henry. How you doing tonight, brother?
I am terrific and getting better. And you don't know what you just said, but you went back to the original name of the NNPA, which was the National Negro Press. You know, I told you, you be coming up with some stuff. But I am well, David. I'm well. And how you doing, my
brother? This is truly a historical night. So
yeah.
I'm glad you were able to bring that up. I'm outstanding, man. There's just so much going on, so much electricity in the air that we just got to bottle this and channel it so that we can get it in proportion to where it needs to.
Oh, yeah. At least begin that process.
Yeah, where it needs to end up. We got to see the end.
Oh, yeah.
For where this is going. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, at least now we're going to be graced with a couple more minutes because our professor of sports, our doctor of sportsology, unfortunately, he is, on a somber note, in Mississippi doing a memorial service for his brother. And so, with all due respects, Mooney Robinson, to your brother, may God welcome him home and to find comfort in his resting arms. We understand that you're not with us tonight physically, but in spirit you're here. But
and we're truly with you in spirit as well, my brother. Yeah. And also, you know, we those dear legends, those people that have inspired us throughout history. We have one also passed on, Dr. Enoch Curtis Pinckney.
Oh Lord, the Bahamian, Miss Pinckney. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I remember the crossing the waters that Michelle Dallas did at the African American Research Library, and Miss Pinckney was one of the panelists. You know, and sometimes we can be rambunctious in our spirit, and you know, and she was quick to tell me, wait a minute, I saw it. You know, so, oh Lord, that's another one, man. May she rest in peace. Wow.
Man, a lot going on, man. Yeah. A lot going on, man. You know, we continue to hear about gun violence. We say it's senseless, especially when we see the loss of lives of children, young children. Our hearts go out to those families. You know, I'm good friends with a young lady that has an organization called Bullets for Life. And it's unfortunate she's overworked. And we just have to continue to help pray and educate our community, talking things out and working things out and not using gun violence as a solution. That goes out to everyone who's listening. If you have any connection with young people, just on the edge, frustrated, just really feeling that this is their only route, you know, gotta try to reach them somehow.
You know, so Dave, you brought up a point. The deaths of the two younger, the young man that was 3, over at right off 27th Avenue, and that's here in Broward County. But man, I was really, I guess, taken back. Sonia Macy, the sister that was killed in Illinois, that the police shot. Man, that was, brothers and sisters. I know we're living in trying times, and mental illness is serious. So it's something that we can't take lightly. nor can we take the intervention of police to understand the situations that they're coming into and allow the human part of them to evolve as opposed to the policing part. I know it's a fine line to cross, but man, the price you have to pay on either side when it's done inappropriately. So we pray for the family of Miss Massey and for her courageous attorney and legal team. Here we go, Brother Ben. So let's get involved with this, man. Let's stop this. Stop.
Speaking of getting involved, our local NAACP has gotten involved, but you were away for a period of time at your national event.
Oh man, and let me tell you this: even though it was 115 degrees outside in Las Vegas, Nevada, the temperature on the inside that was crunk up by the NAACP all-in efforts were truly to be commended and recognized. Brother Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, and the chairman Leon Russell and all their team who put this event together, man, they did an outstanding job. The sister from the Council of Negro Women, and I'll mess her name up if I try to pronounce it. She's a Delta, but she's a grounded sister that brought a message. And I need to learn how to put these videos up. So if there's anybody out there in the viewing audience can assist me in putting these videos up for people to see, I certainly would appreciate it. And I see we got a captive audience here. Wesley Boyd is there. Okay, well, I'm coming on back to the NAACP as we deal with the situations there. I must admit, man, that every panel, every session, every person that were there were truly all in. I had the privilege of sitting next to, or being at the table with the Spingarn medalist, Skippy. Him and the labor people. Brothers and sisters, there's a movement here, David.
Mm-hmm.
There's a movement afoot. And in order to get involved with this, you got to jump on in with both people.
Yes.
And don't be hesitant. Get involved with your local NAACP and just get to work because it's about us.
You said both feet, but I felt you said all fours.
Oh,
I felt like you said just jump in.
Do that.
Feet, hands, everything that you can afford to apply to making this happen. I heard your president.
Oh man, let me tell you something. Joe Biden, Mr. President, Joe Biden, when he came on the stage at the NAACP's convention, the all-in convention, he came on jogging. So he jogged on it. I'm telling you, the electricity in the air, the energy, all the energy, it made you move with enthusiasm. It made you move with a purpose. And he was no exception. He came in, he brought his message. He told the crowd that he was a lifetime member of the NAACP and that he was all in. I'm telling you, man, it was electrifying. It was like the old school. Let's get motivated. Let's do something. Let's move something. So
yes, we can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, I mean, if we mention our president, it's kind of obvious now. All the excitement is around sacrifice that he's made and the choices that he's made to move this country forward. And I'll just lean into you on that one.
Okay.
Because I know you were on the call the other day. We had a women's call, we had men's call, and I hear all the other groups are setting up their calls to raise money and support our new candidate for president.
And I can go back to when Congressman Claiborne had the conversation with Joe Biden in South Carolina and brought Joe from a vulnerable point of being the underdog way down to rising him up to the level that he actually won. He met with the NNPA, the Black Publishers in South Carolina, and we had a conversation. And there's a picture where Joe and I were talking, and I asked Joe, well, as a chef, I know chef got different seasons in his cabinet. What do you have in your cabinet? And he spoke about the diversity, and he has been true to his word as it pertains to diversity and what he has done to bring this country together. I mean, it was remarkable of what he did and how he did it. He held true to his word of making the first Black female Supreme Court justices. He said he would do that, and he did it, along with some other stuff, with the student loans and just all of the remarkable things that this man has done. And for him to, if he was a samurai warrior, to lay his life on the sword and allow it to be passed on to the next generation. And he bowed out extremely gracefully. He did that. And we can only commend him for what he did to set this stage up. At least it's in motion, right? The baton has been exchanged. The hand was appropriately positioned to accept the baton. Now the runner has it. And we have to continue to prepare the way for the runner to succeed.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that kind of segues into something that we wanted to open up with before we bring our guest on. And it's something that was inspired by Mary McLeod. This, just understanding who she was, it inspired me to put this together. And it's called The Burden of Responsibilities of Citizenship. This is not a free ride. If you think so, you will surely be forced to ride on the back of the bus. We have a responsibility to know and understand how our government works, and to teach and to train others, to engage, motivate, encourage everyone around us, to educate and create awareness of the plans of the opposition and why it's so important for us to unite, stay focused, and dedicated to the cause. Y'all, the battle continues.
Wow. It's a great segue, man, into tonight's program. That's sums it up and says it all, what we're up against.
Yeah. And the theme for the show tonight is understanding the vote and how we support it. And oh man, we got some guests coming on tonight.
And David, if we back up for a moment, when we talk about understanding the vote, right?
Yeah.
And what's the second part we said?
And how we support it.
When we were having our conversation and we talk about voting and how serious it is and how there's much more to casting your ballot for us to be actually involved with this voting process. There's different messaging, there's different types of how do I say this, apparatuses that would try to prevent this from happening. It's all sorts of things. So tonight's topic, it begs for some deeper understanding to what it is, right? Right. And we have some guests who can give us some other insight. I really didn't. Well, for me personally, we talked about it.
Yeah.
When it comes to giving monies to campaigns electronically, how you go about doing that, I was sort of baffled in understanding. I'm saying, man, hold up. Am I opening up my whole bank account for the world to see? How do we do this? Well, anyway, one of our guests explained it to me, and I think that we all just need to take a look at this whole voting process and supporting the voting, what we need to do to make it happen. Yeah, I guess that's
absolutely. So without any further delay, I want to go ahead and bring on an individual that's no stranger to the 2-minute warning. He's kind of taking a sabbatical right now. He's working on his second book. But he found time to say, "Hey, brothers, we need to carry this torch and share this information." No stranger to the 2 minute one, and our dear brother, Mr. Perry Busby. Perry, how are you, sir?
Good evening, my brothers. Good evening, 2
Welcome.
Minute Warning crew.
Welcome
How
back.
is everybody? How is everybody? No, man, I am glad to be back, and man, you know, tonight's conversation is one that's dear to my heart, and I dare say it is what birthed the 2 Minute Warning. So we're just being true to who we are, and I'm glad to be here and glad to spend time speaking with my brothers and the audience. And let me get to the side and let's bring on the professor.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then allow me to introduce the professor. He's a multifaceted educator, a lecturer specializing in multicultural education, African American studies, the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's a civil rights. He's been involved with civil rights and more. He taught at Southern Methodist University, serving as the director of multicultural student affairs and as an adjunct professor of African American studies. Within the Dallas Independent School System, he was the special assistant to the superintendent and the director of multicultural education. Additionally, he was a consultant for a PBS documentary on the first federal holiday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's also a member of the Dallas County African American Educators Hall of Fame. With no further ado, let's bring on Professor Glover.
Greetings, my brother. Greetings. It's a
Yes,
pleasure.
sir.
Greetings.
Welcome to the 2 Minute Warning, Professor.
I'm honored to be among such mighty oaks this evening, and as we dare to move forward and continue our movement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I would like to just offer that, and that we would certainly remember Congressman Shirley Jackson Lee, who passed recently, and certainly she as one of the giants. And so as we move into this evening, I'd like to lift up her name as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Texas in the house.
Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I had the privilege of working as her data operations manager for her campaigns from 98 to, I would say, maybe 2006. And as I said, it was unfortunate during this last time they wanted to make rise of her in her backdoor moments of running her campaign. But she was equally passionate as she was tenacious, but she had a very good heart and she knew how to laugh. And so, as Professor said, we lift up our hearts to her, Professor Elwin Lee and children during this time. But we have lost a great soldier in Texas.
Yes.
Wow. On a somber note.
Yes, on a somber note. But Professor, he shared just a little bit about who you are and what you do. Go ahead and kind of just dive in there, Professor, and kind of share where we are right now. Bring us up to date on what we need to do.
Well, I'm delighted as I sit here with you. I'm wearing my shirt, and we're talking about the vote, and this is the shirt I wear when I go vote. It says, "I matter, you matter, we matter, Black voters matter." I have one of my stickers here from the last election, because we know and understand that all politics is local. All politics is local. And now I encourage you, as we talk tonight, to really, while we're looking at the larger presidential race, so often we lose sight of the foundational realities of politics, and that's local. Also, I'd like to suggest to you tonight that, and I've said this with several colleagues and friends of mine and in the community, one of the great tragedies, and particularly in the African American community, I do a straw poll so often. I ask people, did you study history or civics? And at high school, particularly junior high school and high school. And I said, who taught you history of civics. And what I've come to find is that most individuals, particularly in the African American community, learn history of civics or the coach taught the class. The coach. It was a course that was not seriously considered. So they said, okay, coach, you can coach and you can go over here and teach this course. Read a book, give a test. So I submit to you that most of us in our community have never, or should I say, have not taken history of civics very seriously. In like Civics 101 and understanding, as we were talking about, our history. So many things that we deal with tonight are things that have to do with civics and history when we start talking about the ballot. And when we start talking about the ballot, and I'm sitting here with my cup, my good friend Ted Ellis, artist, and he has an image of cotton pickers here to former President Obama, from picking cotton to picking presidents. This is the journey that we've taken from picking what? Cotton. To picking what? Presidents. I am also the founder, and I share tonight for the first time on this scale, I'm president of the National Association of African American Cotton Pickers, the NAACP, the NAACP. Make clear, I'm a 7th generation cotton picker. I'm 68. I still pick cotton. And there is, some of you may can Google this, the audience, there's a beautiful piece of art of a hand reaching down, bronze statue picking cotton and with a ballot in his hand also. And so when we understand where we are tonight, we must understand where we've come from. Because when we start talking about the ballot and voting, and we start talking about how we elect not only all officials from the local level up to the state level are elected by a popular vote. The president is actually elected by the Electoral College. The Electoral College is represented by electorates. See, this is Civic 101. And so many people may think they're going to the poll and voting for the president. Many people get upset because, well, there's a popular vote and we have the Electoral College. And we should understand how that works because the Electoral College had to do with slavery and the representation, the population of states, and how they would then get certain electors. And so when we hear this term today, the battleground states, and what they're meaning and going to certain places, you see in the Electoral College, you have 538 electorates. The candidate who wins gets 270 of those electorate votes. The election in November is held by the populace, and then in December, they go back and have the Electoral College. We know that in history, it has specifically changed. We read it 3 times. You look at the Rutherford B. Hayes election of 1877, where the federal government, the compromise was that remove the federal troops and Hayes would be appointed, get elected. We went back into 100 years of Jim Crow until 1965. We look at the Bush Gore election, same thing. And we begin to see a retrenchment in federal involvement on the local level. And then we look at the election of former President Trump with Miss Hillary, and where she won the popular vote, but he won the electoral vote. So with that, I'm saying we need to understand how these voting dynamics, I'm sure Brother Perry can talk more about that, what happened, but we need to understand what our role is and at the local level and moving up to the national level, and then how states distribute these votes and how the president actually gets elected.
Perry, you talked before to David and I about this here in Broward County, what you experienced and what you found out. Was it the over and under or some other?
Yeah.
But bring us How old is in here from where you are?
Well, I think one of the things that I appreciate Professor for that civic historic lesson. And I think one of the things that as we approach this election, that we begin to understand that politics isn't just something we set to the side. It is ingrained in our history. It is ingrained in our emotions. And so I understand that, part of this current movement is to deflate your interest in your politics. That is a very prescient motive, is to get you disengaged, because and what I've always liked is Republicans have always said and have advocated for less government. But when you say, well, what is the government? It's right there. The government is made up of we the people, for the people, and of the people. So when they're saying they want less government, they're saying they want less you. Specifically. But one of the things, if I can, as Professor laid out so eloquently about the compromise, and if we can just add a little math to that 3/5 compromise, we have to look and say, well, when did the other fraction come in to make that a whole number? Because you can't make a whole number out of a fraction. And once we've been fractured, what has made us whole? And you can't say, well, the Voting Rights Act. Well, the Voting Rights Act, we're still being suppressed. So that's still not quite back to that being voted whole, and this whole idea of one man, one vote. And so as I look at what really undergirds our elections, what I offer is we should be worried that we are not 3/5, but we may be closer to 1/5 in terms of our voting and in terms of this process. And I say that solely from a historical numbers view. And to put another book in on the professor as he's talking about how we approach elections, my advocacy is always about what happens once I turn from Perry the voter, Clarence Glover the voter, into this digital voter that's supposed to represent my voice. And I'm not saying that in terms of bringing up Trump and a big lie. What that was what Trump and Republicans have always done, and what we saw when we still get upset when Republicans talk about being woke. They co-opted something that was tangible and was making headway. They co-opted it and turned it into this sort of 3-card Monty. And as we approach this election, and I hear us talking about all of the enthusiasm, but those emotions play themselves out in the ballot box. And if there's anything that I want to help us begin to look at is looking at some of the ways we can help ourselves in our approach to voting. Because there's no accident that African Americans are the driver behind turnout.
Okay. So speaking of turnout, Brother Busby, you supplied us.
Where we are now is we are putting so much emphasis getting to the poll that we are not cognizant, we're not even available and present in the things that go on after you cast your vote. There is another part of the election. And what we tend to do is be at the watch parties, because we've committed ourselves to service. And we're looking for this one time to celebrate, but there's a whole nother doggone thing happening that I want us to begin to take some looks at. and how we can use the resources that we have, and to understand the rules of voting, because there are rules. We just aren't cognizant of them, or we're not paying attention to them.
So on that note, Brother Busby, you supplied us with a video. We want to go ahead and segue into that, and then we're going to come back and hear from some of our viewers, and then get back to you, Professor. But let's cue that up.
Nationalism, I think, right now is probably the most powerful it has ever been. There's just so much going on under a lot of folks' radar that they're not even really aware of.
God bless you guys. Hello, North Carolina. I love you so much, and I love this state. There are today in America 20 million more evangelical Christians we can mobilize and get to the polls. And we're going to do it.
Christian nationalism in America is well established, well organized, and well funded. And I'm going to stress that last statement especially. Well funded. We're talking about organizations that have budgets that run sometimes in the tens of millions, hundreds of millions. Collectively, when you add it all up, you're probably talking about in excess of $1 billion annually from these Christian nationalist organizations.
We put voter guides in thousands of churches. You couldn't get away from us. We were in your text message. We were calling you. We were at the door. We were in your church. And you know what? We didn't stop until you voted. And I don't want to scare anybody here, but we had 147 different data points that we tracked on every one of those voters. Everything from where they live to their voting history to various consumer background on those folks, like what magazines they read, what TV they watched, what kind of car they owned, whether or not they owned a gun. If you were one of these 1.8 million after we contacted you like that, 84% of those people voted, a 9% increase in turnout, and they are the reason why North Carolina went red, and they're the reason why it's going to stay red.
Okay. Okay, stop right there. Hold up, wait a minute. We're gonna put some boom in this right here. Okay, Perry, that thank you, that was a good point. I see Wesley Board is talking about the art of war. Now I know Professor Glover, you and I had a conversation about how important words are. So if you would, if you can enlighten us a little bit on that you shared with me in terms of word and messages, and let's deal with this from where these folks are coming at.
Well, first of all, let us go back and say again, history is so critical, and we don't have all the time tonight. But when we talk about the very nature of our society, our nation, should I say, the wording which we shared up tonight, our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, we the people, we hold these truths to be self-evident. First of all, we need to understand that at that particular time in history, we were talking about an English establishment of a British transition to America, predicated upon a Western Puritan Christian faith doctrine, which later on evolved into a grand revival in this country built around what is called manifest destiny. And manifest destiny then being established as God-ordained destiny, that God had ordained these Western European British men to come to this land, i.e. remove the Indian and take the African, bring them here, etc. All of this is covered over by this philosophy. Let me also reference very quickly is that when we start talking about Democrat and Republican, we also know that after the 13 colonies up in on the East Coast that we call New England states, that much of what the African experienced during Civil War and thereafter was under Republican rule. Okay, up until the Democrat transition. Lincoln was a Republican. Dr. King's father was a Republican. Many of them were Republicans until that transition, built around civil rights at the time. So we see that what Dr. King them did during that period of time were young men, very young men, 25 years old, and others, Dr. Lafayette, Dr. Ralph Abernathy, many of these who I know personally who have mentored me over the years, they were able to speak to this nation through the voice of the African-American preacher in a way that had never been done. Like Frederick Douglass did it, but now it was magnified, television, microphones, etc. And they were able to move this nation in the direction of civil disobedience, civil rights, nonviolent direct action, and engage in a battle with nonviolent direct. Those of us who are 68, Jim Crow, all of us, I believe, we were children during that time, our parents, but saw this. Well, after that, what we saw as a theologian myself and having been in the seminary, is that what we saw is that they studied this particular body of communication. There's a term that has now been established called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And it is used by the extreme right and white evangelical conservatives. And it is the ability to, just as you saw Ralph Reed, who I've known about for years, who what Ralph is doing is basically moving. We know that we speak and pronounce and we change minds by how we speak. And they begin to integrate within this Newt Gingrich, Phil Graham, Pat Robertson, all of that began to come together and give birth to this what is called white Christian nationalism, which you alluded to a moment ago. And it began to shift our nation. And so subsequently, we saw them use the tools of young white conservatives to do that. But also they used us. If you look at many of those shows of TBN and 700, a lot of those, you always saw black singers. You saw black voices behind us somewhere around, okay? I'm not, because they needed that emotion, that energy to help fuel this mental transitioning in the mind, neuro-linguistic programming. You can look at the Trump campaign, we see it directly that, because even with the use of MAGA, making America great again, appealing to a bygone era for a new generation. And that's why, as you and I've talked, my brother, I have offered a counter narrative of making America greater, because I've not seen anybody counter the narrative. MEGA is a movement, make America great again. There has to be a counter movement to the MEGA movement. So it's not simply about Vice President Kamala Harris, but it's about the people at the grassroots level. And that's what we see in the MEGA movement. I've traveled this country. I see it in the backwoods. I see it in the suburbs. I see it on the college campuses. MEGA, this red cap, is a movement, just like Ted Cruz with the Tea Party, you remember? And shifted the nation. That's what we must do right now as we move in. Not just simply talk about electing Vice President Kamala Harris as president, but also establishing a movement that brings us together, that we're programmed by it. Again, I say making America greater should be that narrative. Making America great. America great again means yesterday. Make America greater means tomorrow.
Professor, hold that thought right there. Hold that thought. Period. Okay. Now, as we saw this evangelical indoctrination, if you will. Yeah. So I need you to explain to us. You talked about, all right, and we're talking about voting. We're talking about everything that encompasses that. Share with our audience, our listening audience, about the over under and things that come that we miss, in our rush to vote.
Okay. Yeah, and let's start with I chose that clip not really about the Christian nationalists. That was the focus of it. My focus was what he said at the last 10 seconds of the campaigns that they were doing. And it wasn't just for, and if we shouldn't be naive to think that they're focused just on getting their turnout. As someone in this industry, someone who is a consultant, who does get offers and has been offered, there are equally parts of campaigns to understand what's going on the other side. And so as we listen to all of these things, I want to help us understand this new world we're in. And we're quick to say, oh yeah, the data, and everybody talks about the data. Well, let me tell you about the data in elections. And it goes to our emotions. The over-under count that happens in elections. Over-under counts happen when when a person chooses not to make a choice in an election. An overvote is when they make too many choices. And for most of us who are seasoned voters, when we talk about this issue, our first refrain is, oh, that's not that many people ought to know how to do that. The numbers don't bear that out. And they don't bear it out because for those of us who are seasoned voters, for those of us who grew up at a time when we took bubble tests and we understood the paradigm in order to get through the tests, we now have people who are new into the election process. And you go, oh, kids? Okay, if you have kids, okay, try to keep them on task. We have language barriers on our ballots that cause people to make incorrect decisions. And so to talk about these things, I'm not talking a few votes here, a few votes there. I'm talking hundreds and thousands of votes. And as Professor Glover is saying, this rally will affect a national race. The variances are just not that great. Where it does affect is on your block, because politics are local and those margins are closer. And as I advocate, I don't advocate out of this fear. I'm here to advocate out of us making some correctives in terms of how we approach this process.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby, I think I got a image. This is from an election that we were able to get, and I want to explain before we do that. Let for those of us who are in for all mail-in ballots, and for those of us who live in states like Florida, where you have to vote with a paper ballot, let me explain what this process is. After you fill out your paper ballot, you put your ballot into this device that's handed. That digital image is the image that officially gets counted. That's your vote on that digital image. And some may say, well, okay, well, that's not a problem. And for those of us who ask for transparency in our voting, we are requesting that our election administrators maintain those digital images because they are the official ballots. But we are getting some resistance because they say, well, you have the paper ballot, so what's the difference? And so if we can, let me put up an image of what makes that difference. In Maryland, we had, we noticed that people were voting in races that weren't logical. They'll miss the first 2 or 3 at the top, and somewhere down in the bottom, a vote registers or very few register. And so we began to ask, well, what's the issue with that? Found ballots where people, instead of filling in the ballot, they circled the name, they scratched through a name, they registered their voice. But here's what happens. As I said, your ballot turns into a digital image. That gets counted, and that looks for a particular shade at a particular spot on the image. Well, if you just happen to be in a race where you have to have a recount, in Florida, they recount by putting the ballots through the machine again. It is only at the third and final step, if it warrants, that they will look and do a visual on your ballot. It is only then that they can understand the voter's intent. Going back to, as you said, Professor Glover, this is just a remake of Florida back in 2000 and the whole hang and shad, and how do we determine intent? And see, because we figured because we have technology involved, and technology is a non-biased player, we now see that we are undercutting ourselves in the process. And so my what I'm here to do tonight is, as it says in Ezekiel, I see all of us as watchmen. It's time for us to blow the horns and let the people know. And if they don't respond, the Bible says it's on them. But we've got some work to do, and I want to help with our grassroots organizations who are there with the people. Let's find some ways to help educate on some of the most mundane things, because that's what's killing us.
Okay. Perry, you said you had a graphic you wanted to put up?
Yeah.
And then Professor, we're gonna come back to you. Okay.
And Perry, while you're getting that, I was able to pull the instructions off of my vote by mail ballot. And the instructions clearly reads here, to vote, fill in the oval completely next to your choice.
Yeah.
Use only a marker provided or a black pen. If you make a mistake, ask for a new ballot. Do not cross out your vote, your vote may not count.
Right. Yeah. I've talked to election advocates around. Some of it has to do with wording, especially, with people where English language is not their really native tongue. There's sometimes on the ballot, which we know wording can trick you, where they've said, pick your choice for president and vice president. Well, we both know that's just a one person. But you'll see people go in, they'll pick, I want Kamala. Oh, they say I have to have a vice president. I'm not picking Trump, but it may be some other person down and they'll shade in too. It runs the gamut. And I know sometimes it sounds illogical, but it just points to a lack of training and preparation.
While he's doing that, Professor.
One of the things that I listened to Brother Perry there, our time is about to run out, of course. He's discussing the technical aspects of voting as I listen to him, as we transition over the years from manual voting to digital voting to electronic voting, and then in some places like Florida where we have paper voting. And when you become frustrated in those moments of those things that any group may do to undermine those processes, if you will, I like to offer, because we're talking about the people who get to the poll, of course, where that takes place. But if we don't get people to the polls to do the process, then we still have not moved ourselves very far down the road. We may have a faithful group of elderly people who are trying to still vote, as we do see today, mothers and grandmothers and fathers, so forth, you see? But we have a new generation that's trying to figure out, why should I go and vote? Why is the ballot important? And I want to leave with my point is that we have to understand why the ballot is important to get to what Brother Perry is talking about, okay? And why I use the cotton. And I'm leaving on this there because cotton, particularly prior to cotton, the nation was built around rice, tobacco, and other things, of course. And that built a nation economically on the back of African people who were 3/5 human, and who later on were counted as that in light of this whole electoral college process. In the states where you had certain populations where we were counted, where we could not vote. But when we finally arrived at the point of voting, and the cotton entered in, because it was cotton, the invention of the cotton gin, that thrust this nation into an industrial revolution that made it the largest, most powerful nation on earth, with England and Asia and other places. There are 6 stages of cotton. We participated in all of them except one, that is the selling of it, which generates the revenue. And when you work as hard as we have worked in this country to build this country on the back of African men and women economically, and never allow them to reap the rewards and benefits of that labor. Let me give you something else. For an example, there's a saying there in the old plantation days of slavery that said, never let a slave learn the value of cotton. Most of us don't even talk about cotton. Do you know that for every 500-pound bale of cotton, the millions of bales that were produced, along with making sheets and sheets and shirts and other things, it produces 313,600 $100 bills. One 500-pound bale of cotton. 313,600 $100 bills. That every time you spend a $10, $5 bill, that's not paper. That's 75% cotton and 25% linen. No paper in it. That's why you can wash it and spin it. Henry Ford, when he built here in Dallas, Texas, his plant next to the Robert Munger cotton gin. Do we know that cotton was a primary factor in the wheels that allowed this nation to turn on? That Goodyear went to Arizona and built an entire area plantation of cotton to get a certain grade of cotton for the tires that America would be riding on. What I'm trying to suggest, gentlemen, this evening is that one of the reasons we do not participate in the system of the idea we call America because we don't feel a part of America. We're not emotionally, intellectually invested in it because of the pain. Whenever I show cotton to us, we run from it. We don't like to talk about it. But I submit to you tonight, there is no other thing in this country that has built this nation of which politics, education, religion centers around. We've gone from cotton to oil to technology. So all of those things in place. All I'm suggesting tonight is that to get us to the ballot, we must find an invested interest in being Americans, being a part of the American experience, so that we can say this is ours, and we want to make sure that it runs and operates in a way that it is to our advantage as well.
Let's do this. Let's do Professor and Perry. We're at the top of the hour, right? And this broad topic, as we try to understand the vote and how we influence it in our parts in it, it's extremely, I won't say complicated, but it's eccentric, and it takes some really delving into. If I can go back to you, Professor, and allow you just a minute, 30, 45 seconds to talk about your Make America Greater, the pledge, if you will, that part that you was explaining. If we could, can we put that up on the screen?
One of the things that I say, my great grandfather, who I raised on the cotton fields with him, made me aware that this was his America. My grandfather, this was his America. They flew the flag with pride. And we know that our ancestors have been there ever since the Revolutionary War. We know that we fought in every battle. Okay. But I think that those of us, I'm 68, and after the Civil Rights Movement, something happened. Many African-American professionals who became professionals engaged in what I call the illusion of inclusion, where success became their focus rather than telling our story. It's because when you're focused only on your personal success rather than telling your collective story, and that story is a part of slavery and the pain and Jim Crow and all those sort of things, and you want to fashion your life now as if those things never happened, then the next generation would never know about those things. So what we had was a lapse in memory until a generation started studying and reading books that I saw at the university and other places, and we saw in the Afrocentric movement, we saw it with Roots, we saw it with other things, and they began, as we call, waking up, i.e. woke. Our freedom story is critical, gentlemen, because it is in that story we find who we are and why we are. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it is that story that says to us that my vote matters because I am a part of the American experience. So, mega, making America greater. That's what we're engaging now, have an opportunity to do with uh, our candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris. It's not about simply voting for her. It is also voting for us.
Okay, great. Okay, Perry, okay, great. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. No, guys, as always, thank you for this evening. And to just piggyback on what the professor has said, again, I've been involved in voting, as I said, since the age of 6, and I've been involved in it in some crazy ways. Most of it on the technical side, and so I understand that kind of makes me sound crazy in some ways, because what does a tech guy really do with politics? But I've been blessed to help us see that politics is made of a collaborative. And what we have to help begin to foster is to help see these different views that, like I said, I mean, to understand election integrity put me into a world where I didn't see anybody like us. And that was my first thing, was why aren't we here? And if I may be so bold, I said, well, I'm here now. And began to meet some other guys like Benny Smith. We've got work to do. And I mean that in every aspect, from cotton to now, as they say, we say knowledge is power, but there's no more powerful world than those who own the digital aspect. And on a daily basis, we give up so much of ourselves and so much of who we are, and we very rarely take in any of that information on ourselves. And the way we take it in really is through our stories. We tell the history of our communities through our stories, and then later on, we begin to see what those numbers really represent. We've always felt them, but it takes on a much bigger view when we see that number, and that number paints that picture better for us. And so if there's anything we can do now, is let's begin to be these revive this renaissance, to be able to see and reimagine through some other spectrums, because our community needs it. And so I leave you all with this. I know we didn't really get a chance to talk as much about the data that I have available, but I solicit the Divine Nine and those who are out on the forefront to help those who vote, to maybe give you some other pointers to help in your efforts. I'm not trying to change how you vote, just trying to help give you some helpful information along the way that can help us. Because we really want to see this happen. And for me, as I said, these are unforced errors. As Dr. so eloquently said, we've done the hard work of getting them to there. Let's kind of do some care work to make sure that we close the deal in the process.
Mm-hmm. Perry, I see that we have Stacey Brown from hashtag Let It Be Known, the NNPA's morning show that's shown across the country. And I'm pretty sure that Stacey would allow you to continue the conversation as well as you, Professor Glover.
Yeah,
but
over under vote is a huge thing nationally.
Yeah, it is a needed topic. We're here scratching the surface, as you said, Perry. We can plant, right? Somebody else has to water. Somebody else has to give God gives the increase. Right. So we're here, and Stacey, I commend you and hashtag Let It Be Known in the early morning hours of what you're doing, keeping us informed. We certainly appreciate you and thank you for that. Thank you, Stacey. Here we are at the top of the hour. Yeah, Professor Glover, if we can give you 30 seconds, I know it's difficult to give you 30 seconds to bring this home from your perspective. I know when you and I had our conversation in Dallas, when we met and bonded, the seriousness of what you had to present is needed. But can you give us 30 seconds and give us in the chat box how we can get back in contact with you? That would be appreciated.
You can contact me solely at Clarence Glover Jr. at AOL.com. Clarence Glover Jr. at AOL.com is my email. My phone number is 214-546-3480. 214-546-3480. But as we close tonight, I'm reflective of, again, my 50 years in ministry and work, and over back in the years. I worked for IBM, and I hear Brother Perry and I was involved in technology back in the 70s. Long before we had these major digital booms. Right. There were two books that were written back then. One is called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler and Megatrend by James Nesbitt. And I offer those to you tonight. Future Shock by Alvin Toffler, and Megatrend by Alvin Nesbitt. These are talking about the future. Fundamentally, technology is nothing but the expansion of the human mind. Technology is the expansion of the human mind. And we're seeing with AI now, artificial intelligence and so forth and so on. But I submit again that to be able to get to what Perry is saying, how do we drive, how do we encourage, how do we inspire? When we talk about NLP, neural language program, you saw Ralph Reed talking about it. You're talking about the data he was talking about, the people he was counting, et cetera, knowing where they live, what they did, what they eat, etc. We are people. And as we close, and I think that one of the great tragedies of our nation is that we have yet to embrace our personhood and our peoplehood. It is only until we embrace our people, our identity, we, the African American people, and find value in who we are, and find value in what we've gone through. When we create the narrative of our story, like on Westerns, we see in Cowboys and his historical pictures, we have to find that type of energy that drives us to the pole to say that we are vested in this land, and this land is worth our time and our energy and the representative government that has been created so that these individuals would do our bidding. We must find that strength through our self-identity, our personhood, to get to where Brother Perry is, to cast those ballots in our interest.
Thank you. Brother Wright?
Well, this has been such a power-packed session. Sister Brown said it. We've had other comments from Sister Mizell, Brother Boyd. I'm just blessed to be here, be a part of this show, and looking forward to us coming back and sharing some additional enlightenment to our viewing audience. And preferably, this will carry both Professor Glover and Brother Perry to other platforms so that we can make sure this information continues to get. But I'm going to forego over to you, my brother. You gave me an opening, and I would love to see you go ahead and close this stuff.
I'm going to do that. Professor Glover, you said something, the human side of us. If we could, if that video is ready with you and prominent minister from Dallas, if we could just listen to this, and I'll begin my closing.
Pastor Freddie Haynes at Wood Pressure West at the Culture Fest. Juneteenth, this is the freedom cotton right here, y'all. Freedom cotton. That's what we're pushing right now for our people. This is where the money comes from. Every dollar bill is made from 75% cotton, 25% linen. Ain't no paper in it, baby. and also every 500-pound bale of cotton produces $313,601 bill. We want our cotton, we want our money.
All right now.
How about the pastor?
Tell the truth, Doc. The whole truth is nothing but the liberating truth.
Liberator truth. We want our money. Cotton is our money. I'm the president now of the National Association of African American Cotton Pickers, and the fourth Sunday is the African American Cotton Pickers Sunday. We coming after our money. Our ancestors picked it. We want it.
Our cotton picking money.
You know, I am truly moved when Black people are unapologetically Black, and we can turn to our inner core to produce what we need.
Let me just say the fourth Monday of October is African American Cotton Pickers Day. Thank you for sharing that. I invite you to join us as we are moving toward it. We're going to be taking cotton picking tools. We're going to be talking about cotton. Waxahachie recognized it. Other cities, Fort Worth is Cotton Town. I've declared Dallas Cotton City, and I'm declaring all over the South. You know, like you have New England states, then we are the cotton picking states down here, and that's where our power is.
Okay.
So join us.
Very good. Thank you, Professor.
National Association of African American Cotton Pickers, the NAACP. 3 A's.
Very good. As the election draws near, the importance of the Black vote cannot be overstated. Historically, Black voters have played a pivotal role in shaping the political landscape, often acting as a decisive force in the key elections. Their participation has been crucial in advocating for civil rights, social justice, and economic equity. This election is no different, with issues such as systemic racism, police reform, healthcare, and the healthcare disparities and economic inequities are at the forefront. Candidates are increasingly recognizing the significance of the Black electorate, acknowledging that addressing their concerns and aspirations is not only a moral imperative, but also a strategic necessity. The collective voice of Black voters has the power to influence policy directions. The electoral, I slipped up. Therefore, it is essential for all eligible Black voters to engage in the electoral process, ensuring that their voices are heard and their votes are counted. The future of the nation hinges on a diverse and inclusive democracy, where every vote, particularly those from the historically marginalized communities, is valued and impactful. Vote as your life depends on it, because it does, and so does everyone you love. God bless you. Thank you, and get involved in this process called voting.